Welcome, everyone, to Time to Thrive. Today, we're talking to Jeremy Slate. He is the founder of Create Your Own Life podcast, which studies the highest performers in the world. He studied literature at Oxford University, specializes in using podcasting and new media to create celebrity, and was ranked #1 in iTunes New and number 78 in the iTunes Top 100. He was named the #1 podcast to listen to by Inc. magazine in 2019, as well as being named a top influencer by Forbes. After his success in podcasting, Jeremy Slate and his wife founded Command Your Brand to help entrepreneurs get their message out by appearing in guests on podcasts. Welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Bethany. It's great to hang out. I know you and I have been talking for a super long time before we even recorded, so I'm sure this is going to be an awesome conversation today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I was telling you beforehand how much I enjoyed reading your book. I mean, it's aligned with my values. So
That's
we
cool.
always like to read things that agree with our values, don't we?
Yeah, it's interesting because it took me 2 years to write it, and the original version I had just finished kind of before the whole world got weird in 2020.
Right.
And and I don't know, for me personally, I decided I needed to talk about my personal values a lot more, and I actually rewrote the entire book after 2020.
Wow, interesting. Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. I mean, you didn't just wake up one day and start doing what you're doing. What kind of got you to that point?
It's strange because I never thought I would be here. So I have a master's in early Roman Empire propaganda, not a very applicable skill in doing anything in life. How did the Roman Emperor convince people it was God? Man, have I got a story for you. But it's not very useful in kind of the workaday world. And I actually ended up teaching high school right after I got to grad school. And I got burnt out super, super quick. And in 2012, my mom ended up having a really bad stroke. And it made me look at a lot of different things in my life and realize what am I doing? Am I going to do this the rest of my life? I'm not happy. I don't see where I'm going with this. You kind of don't make very much in a private Catholic school in New Jersey. So it was kind of I've got to do something else. So my wife, who was my fiance at that time, was presented with a network marketing opportunity. Didn't know what that was. So I'm I'm going to be a millionaire in a month. It didn't happen like that, but it at least made me take the leap. I remember that call with the principal and he's like, "You're insane." I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to go, get my jet or whatever I was going to do at that point in time." So it really got me moving, which was the first thing. But then I jumped out of that in about 2 years. I went to private labeling and selling products on Amazon. I sold life insurance. I tried a gamut of different things to try and find something that worked for me. And frankly, I had been a podcast listener since 2007, 2008. I've just loved podcasts. So in 2015, I started a podcast as a hobby called the Create Your Own Life Show. It took off. We had 10,000 listens in our first month. And it led to me interviewing, I think at this point, we're going to hit 1,000 episodes by July 5th of this year. So we've had a lot of incredible people. People started asking us for help. And in 2016, we started a PR agency called Get Featured Media, which later became Command Your Brand. And we have a team of 17 here now. And we're really just trying to help people get their messages out by appearing on top-rated podcasts.
Wow, that's fantastic. I'd love to just, because I know our time here is limited, so I just want to jump right in and start talking about some of the things I read in your book that I was really attracted to, and I really feel like they're important to discuss. And they're not the typical business topics that we generally see people talk about. So I was glad to see someone really kind of addressing some of these other things. You talk about the fact that nobody becomes successful without having courage.
Mm-hmm.
For me, courage doesn't mean that we're not afraid or have fear. It just means that we're brave enough to do it anyway.
Yes.
And so in speaking with the, people that you've interviewed, so many people for your show, for the book, there's so many stories. What would you say is the common theme among successful people as respects to courage?
I think when you look at it, I think people think of courage. They think of the movies, right? They think of Saving Private Ryan. They think of all these things of somebody running at a machine gun nest. And it's just yes, that's courage, but at an extreme level, right? Because courage is also a scale. Something that's really hard for me may be easy for you, or something that's really hard for someone else may be really easy for me. So I think when you look at it, we each kind of have our own scale of like what courage is. For some people, it's courageous to just have to talk to other people because that's really hard for them. So when you want things you want out of life, the thing I've seen is that people that are extraordinary, they're willing to do things that make them uncomfortable. And, having courage really is like building a muscle. The more times you attempt the things you don't want to do, you go to the places you don't want to go to, you do different things. Like for me, the very first time I got an airplane, I'll be honest with you, I was 20 years old. So it took me a long time to do that. After that point, my fiance, who's now my wife, and I became very seasoned travelers. We've been in like 20 something countries. But the first time I did that, like actually get on a plane, I was terrified. And that's a simple thing. But for me in that moment, that took courage. And that became something I then loved to do. So I think many times courage is one of those things that it's going past things we're going to be uncomfortable. We know maybe a little risky, but you just do it because you're kind of like, well, what's the worst that could happen, right? One of the things my wife and I, since we own a business together, often say to each other is you have some tough times, right? Staff leaves, you have, down times in sales, but you get through those times, and we always look at each other when we're done. We go, but did we die? Well, no, we didn't. We're here. And courage is really confronting those things and just kind of working through them.
I think it kind of ties into imposter syndrome for business people.
We've all got it.
Yeah. And one of the things that, we've really talked about on the show here and inside the Time to Thrive membership is about the fact if you don't have imposter syndrome, or if you don't feel like you're always stretching yourself or having to be courageous, as we've been talking about, then you're probably not growing because, it just means when you have those feelings, it just means that you are pushing beyond what is comfortable. And you're never going to be successful if you just stay in your status quo.
I think that's so important. And it's funny. I've seen this meme going around and being a parent, you get this as well. Like, I feel like everybody should have the confidence of a 3-year-old. Man, she thinks she can do anything, and it's pretty incredible. But I think when you look at it, like, you should be doing things that scare you, right? Like, if you aren't doing things that scare you, that stretch you, that's whatever, like, I don't know how to put it any other way than like life isn't an even keel thing, right? It's not a straight line. It's either growing or it's dying. Just like, you look at any plants, you look at any animals, right? Like that's how life is. There is no status quo, no matter what people want to say. So if you aren't finding a way to grow, you're either falling behind or you're becoming less alive in a lot of ways. Right. So you have to continue to grow and continue to confront things you don't want to do and go towards those things that make you uncomfortable. Yeah. But it's really, really hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, leaning in, learning to lean in. So another topic that you address in your book, which is unremarkable to extraordinary, by the way. I don't know if I said the title, so I want to make sure people know what that is, but is about adversity. And adversity is something that every business owner is going to run into at some point. And, in the membership, we talk about, understanding your why, because when things get hard, if you don't have your why, you're going to feel like giving up. How does our approach to adversity really impact on our success overall?
It's interesting because I think if you look at like 97% of people, they see something that's hard or they see something that's scary, and a couple different things happen. They look at it and they say, poor me. Why does this always happen to me? These things happen to me. How terrible is this? These things happen to me. It's a victim mindset is one part of it. There's another way to take a look at those things and say, well, that's scary. I'm going to run this way. When you look at adversity, right, I tend to look at it like a blacksmith furnace. Remember back in the day when somebody wanted to make a sword, they'd have to heat that metal up in order to make that sword. Adversity is the same thing. You go through that difficult time. You go through that challenging thing. You go through whatever that is, and you come out the other side different. So when you're looking at it as someone that's extraordinary, you're looking at this situation for this may be difficult, this may be hard, but what's my advantage from the situation? How can I become better from the situation? How can I become who I'm meant to be? I don't know if you're a football fan, but
Roll Tide.
Okay, Roll Tide. There we go. But I'm a huge Tom Brady fan, and not because I've been a Patriots fan. I'm actually a Packers fan. But I think he's a really great example of adversity, right? Like you look at him, and he barely started in high school until his senior year. He got to college at Michigan. He competed with Brian Greasy and then with Drew Henson. So he barely started in college. Gets drafted in the 6th round into the NFL, only plays because Drew Bledsoe literally almost died in the field getting hit by Mo Lewis. But he always continued to show up. He continued to work through those things, continued to make himself better. And then when that moment of adversity came, and it came with him in a way that it could put him in success, he was ready for it. So I think that's what it's also about as well. There's a quote by Abraham Lincoln, and it says that I will prepare and my time will come. Adversity is going to happen, challenges are going to happen, and you don't know when it's going to be that one time that you're going to have your shot to do something awesome. So you have to look at it as something that's transformative and something that's an opportunity.
So true. And, I think as business owners, sometimes we start getting focused. When things get hard, we start wondering, second guessing.
Yeah.
Am I doing the right things? Do I have the right strategy? Do people care about what product or service I'm offering? And so that creates doubt, and that, seed of doubt can start taking root and kind of take us to a bad place in our mindset.
Yeah.
So we have to be, if we can expect adversity and just know that it's going to come, and then have some strategies that are intentional around, okay, when adversity comes, this is what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Seth,
I think that's a really great point too, because if you look at somebody that looks at adversity differently, they would look at it and say, okay, so this is, let's take a football example again, just because once again, I love football and baseball. But you look at it again. Nick Swisher, one of my favorite players that played for the Yankees and then for the Atlanta Braves and a bunch of other teams. But he was out of high school, not drafted. His dad, Steve Swisher, was a first-round pick back in the 70s. Nick said, okay, there's one school that's going to give me a college scholarship, and that was Ohio State University. He had such a great college career, he then became a first-round pick because he found the opportunity, found how he's going to get through it, and found how he's going to use that adversity. You got to figure it out.
Awesome. Now, another trait that you talk about that is really necessary or common or dominant even, in those who are successful business leaders, CEOs, and that is the ability of being a self-learner. Now, I know this is something that's important to me.
You and I were very passionately talking about this before we started recording.
I'm a consumer. So that, if you're going to offer a free webinar, I'm going to watch it. And I'll pay for more if it added value. I listen to podcasts constantly, books on, I listen to them. If I'm in the car, there's no music. It's podcast. Nobody wants to drive. None of my kids want to drive with me. Because they're, can we listen to music instead of these people talking? I'm like, listen and learn. What are some of those key activities of those high performing CEO self-learner types? What are some of the things that they're doing to really next level, and what kind of impact does that have on them overall?
Well, I want to add one caveat to this, and I really hope you don't hate me after this, but I want to I think the way our education system is set up is really broken, right? Like it's not set up in a way where somebody takes class A, they come out and have B skill and they can do C, right? Like it's not set up that way. And I think we also put we put too much of an emphasis on college, right? And I'm somebody with an advanced degree. I went to school way too much, but I feel like there's certain things you should go for and there's certain things you shouldn't go for. So I think when you take a step back at that, people that are extraordinary or that are really motivated self-learners, they take a look at schooling and they say, okay, if I want to be a lawyer or a doctor, do I need that? Yeah, probably, because there's certain things like I don't want somebody operating on me that hasn't went to school for it. That's kind of dangerous. But they look at it and they say, okay, do I need schooling for this? Because if you look at a lot of people I've talked to, they're self-taught. They've learned how to do things from reading books, and they've learned how to do things from actually doing them. I think one of the biggest things missing in the world, and something people that are extraordinary truly get, is the value in apprenticeships. Working for somebody for little pay or no pay that has the skills you want, has the career you want, so that you can, number one, discern if you like it, or number two, get those skills, right? Because how many people go to college at 18 for a career, they get out and they be like, oh God, I'm not doing that. Well, you just spent $200,000 in 6 years or 5 or 6 years of your life figuring it out. That's a really bad investment. So when you look at it, you find somebody that has what you want, you learn directly from them, and you read every single thing you can learn about that, and you try to find every single opportunity you can find to do that, right? Because Malcolm Gladwell talks about this idea of the 10,000 hour rule. I think that's a little bit too arbitrary. Like, I think you could probably do it in 8,000. But anyway, I think the number of times you're willing to do something, there is nothing better than hands-on experience to do something. And people that are extraordinary truly realize that. And they don't poo-poo certain careers, right? I've interviewed a gentleman that's made millions of dollars on YouTube, but he did it by being an incredible plumber that learned how to put his content on YouTube, right? So you can make millions of dollars being a plumber. You can make millions of dollars, if you're a great HVAC guy and you learn how to build a company and hire all those people to build a company. So I think at the same time, we need to take a look at how we learn, what we're learning, and to kind of take our own responsibility for what we learn and our own discernment of it.
I love that. I love the word discernment too, because for me, I like the return on my time.
Yeah.
So I like to learn things that I can apply. But I've also had moments where you were talking about, where people have gone to school for a particular thing and then maybe aren't using it. But I like to say too that nothing ever gets wasted as long as we're willing to take the lesson. So, it might have not worked, but or I might not be using that particular skill or whatever, but I still had the experience. I still had
Yep.
I can still maybe change some of that information to apply it to a different situation. So I try not to think that anything that I've done has ever been wasted. Whether it was scooping ice cream, and learning how to deal with the public, or raising my kids. I used a lot of my business skills in my parenting.
Yep.
So.
Well, that's why I disagree with like influencers like Gary Vee saying like, well, don't do, SHIT or things you don't like to do. Well, if you're going to build a business and be successful, you're probably going to have to. But
Yeah.
if, get successful enough, they don't have to do them forever, right? Like, I think that's really, really vital to take a look at. Like, there's something to be learned in everything that you do. And I mentioned all those different careers that I tried to like figure it out. I still learn something from each one of those things that I use to this day. And I think that's how you have to approach things, is how can I learn from this and how can I discern with this? You look at, the seminary, right? Like when somebody's going to something to either be like a priest or they're going to be a religious person of some point in time. It has two purposes, right? The first purpose is to train somebody in that career. The second purpose is what's called discernment. Should I even be here? And I think it's really, really vital to discern, should I be here? Do I want to spend the rest of my life doing this thing I don't like?
Well, okay, so I'm gonna switch gears into another direction on you. Sarah Blakely, who's the CEO of Spanx, tells a story where the way she was raised with regards to failure. And every day when she and her siblings would come home from school, and they would sit around the dinner table, her dad would ask them, "How did you fail today?" And so they would share, a mistake they made or something that happened. And then he would ask, well, what did you learn from it? And then there was high fives all around and celebration for the lesson. So in growing up, her mindset around failure was radically impacted by this practice that her dad had. And that's so true, because even as kids, in the way we're raised, not that anybody meant anything bad by it, but we do tend to celebrate winners.
Yes.
Right. And
we should.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because we've talked too about how every kid should not get a trophy. But that mindset around failure and the ability to accept failure as part of the journey and part of the lesson, right? It's okay to fail.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, and I was thinking of a story when you were talking about this. In high school, I was like an all-star caliber second baseman. I was a really good second baseman. Problem was, the coach's son was a terrible second baseman, but his dad was the coach. So that meant I was playing left out, left bench, even though I was one of the best players on the team. So my dad said to me, okay, well, this is a crap situation, son. What are you going to do about it? I said, okay, I guess I'll learn to play the outfield, right? Because our outfielders kind of stink and I could probably grab any one of those positions. My first play in the outfield, I was used to ground balls and everything else. I go to catch the ball, it goes over my glove and it hits me below the belt. It was the single most painful experience of my life. And my father said, oh, Okay, you're not going to do that again, right?
Oh,
So
wow.
you know what I did? My dad then took me every single night for I couldn't even tell you how many months, and he hit me fly balls and fly balls and fly balls. And you know what? I became the best outfielder on that team. So it's what you commit to and what you do that creates excellence, right? There's a really, I'm a huge Green Bay Packers fan, as I mentioned. There's a really great quote by Vince Lombardi that I think we should take a look at in everything we do in life. And he says that we should always chase excellence or always chase perfection, knowing it's not possible. Because in that pursuit of perfection, we're going to find excellence. And I think when you approach everything in your life like that, like, man, you can really create some cool stuff.
That's cool. There's a quote in your book that I really love. So I want to pull it out and talk about it.
Oh, I hope I remember it.
Define your success. Don't let others define it for you. So tell us a little bit more of why we need to define our own success.
Well, I think this goes to a lot of what we've been talking about, right? Like society looks at success as one way. Maybe your parents look at success as another way. I know for me, like, we have a huge responsibility as parents, as we were talking about how we raise our kids and the values we instill in them. But at the same time, like I picked a career because my parents wanted it, not because I wanted it. And I think what happens is you then live your life trying to please other people. When you're looking at being extraordinary, you look at it and you say, okay, well, this is what I want to do, but I'm then not going to be adversarial to people that don't agree with that, right? I think there's sometimes we pick a career and let's say a friend doesn't like it and we're like, well, you're a jerk and you don't like my career and whatever it is, you're creating an enemy. So what you have to look at is you decide what you want to do, you be okay with others not liking it. And here's the thing you'll find. When you commit to that thing, get better at that thing, and do some awesome things with that thing, the people are going to come back to you and be like, man, you're really good at this. How did you do this? Well, 5 years ago, you weren't really super supportive of what I'm doing. So you have to commit to what you want. Don't commit to what other people want because you're going to find yourself living your life for people that will not die for you. And I think that's a really, really important viewpoint to look like because, we have a finite amount of time on this planet. Do you really want to spend it living your life for other people? Like, does that really make a ton of sense? Or living your life by someone else's values? Like, that's a very difficult position to be in. So you have to really decide what you want. Don't create enemies while you're doing it, but, really commit to that thing.
Wow. I love that. And when you were talking about it, it kind of brought up for me when, I was telling you before the show, I had one biological, and then I adopted a sibling group of 4, and they really had some special needs. I really wanted to homeschool them and keep them in that safe environment. So when I started my business, so that I could do that, people told me, oh, you need stability. You need a regular paycheck. You need, everybody had an idea what I needed. That you need to put them in school so you have a break from them, or because why do you think that you can do a better job than the teachers, the professionals, the people who are committed to that? And so as a mama, that can create a lot of shame, a lot of
Yep.
doubt, a lot of all those things. But I had to discern what was best for my family and leave the naysayers and focus on what they needed from me. And the business for me at that time, that my why was about keeping a roof over their heads and doing what I wanted to. Of course, the why evolves when they grow up and leave the nest and you're still there working away at your business. But I think that's why that quote really resonated with me.
Well, Bethany, I think that's really, really important. Like, that's a really important thing because you look at it, right? Like, 98.5% of people in the world are really good people. There's only about 2% of people that really are like not such good people that really want evil intentions for you. So a lot of times when you're looking at naysayers, a lot of times it's because they care about you, right? They don't want something bad to happen to you. They don't want something negative to happen to you, or like it, they failed doing it. They don't want you to fail doing it. So you also have to look at it for where it comes from. I think too many times people approach naysaying with like this, well, I'm going to do it to prove you wrong. And it's kind of like you're creating an enemy or an adversary doing that, and you're not creating support for yourself because you know what? When you work hard at something and get good at something, you can actually create admiration in other people, and admiration creates support. So I think sometimes you have to be willing to go it alone initially, but once you start doing things, you're going to start to see that support come your way because there's only about 2% of people that really don't like you and that really don't want good things to happen for you.
Yeah, we don't have time for that.
Exactly.
So one of the things that you and your wife are really good at is helping people tell their stories.
Yeah.
We talk about this in the membership a lot, the importance of being able to, tell your brand story. And so why is it important that we don't rely on others to do that, that we take control of it ourselves?
Because the thing you have to look at is like just how our world is, right? The news cycle, it's moving so fast. Something that was important an hour ago may not matter as much now. We're bombarded by, like, I don't even think 5,000 messages a day is enough. Like, it's thousands of messages every single day, if not
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands. So your story can very easily get drowned out is the first thing you got to look at. The second thing you have to look at is because there's so many things happening, unless you do something wrong, the media usually doesn't care. If you do something wrong, they'll be the first ones to report it. But like they usually aren't looking for, well, who's doing something good in the world today and who's doing something nice in the world today. So you have to take responsibility to tell your own story, whether it's on podcasts, whether it's on stages, whether it's in writing articles, whether it's in guest appearances, because you have to fill that vacuum. Because you have to think about when you have a great experience at a restaurant, most people don't leave a positive review even when they had a great experience, but when they have a bad one, they're going to immediately leave one. So you have to think about, like, negative experiences happen and negative things are going to happen, and your best weapon is to always be telling your story, because then when that bad thing happens, it doesn't really hurt so bad. So it's going to happen because when you're on a big mission and you're getting bigger and getting expansive, people are going to attack you a little bit. So you have to be willing to tell your own story, get out there, take responsibility for it, and realize if you leave it up to other people, you're then becoming effect rather than cause. And you want to be more causative in everything you can be in life.
Do you find when you first start working with businesses and business leaders that they they either don't know the first thing about telling their story, or what they say is what everybody else in their space is saying? Like they're just mimicking their competitors rather than creating something a unique value proposition. Is that your experience? And what's the process that you help people get to that place where they understand better about what their unique story would look like?
Well, there's two different things to that. The first thing we run into, and this is probably something you've seen a lot, is people don't have the understanding and the difference between public relations and marketing. And because of that, they try to make everything marketing. Like, oh, that's marketing, and that's marketing, and that's marketing. But public relations creates a know, like, and trust factor so that your marketing works better and you have pieces to market, right? Like, that's a really, really important thing. So I think initially that's something you have to handle with people because they want to make everything an infomercial, and that's kind of weird. Like, you have this guest on and they're just pitching, and you're like, this is really weird. So like that's not going to create a know, like, and trust factor where somebody then knows you, likes you, trusts you, and wants to take the next step with you. And that's the value in public relations. So that's the first part to a story. The second part is, what is your differentiator? What makes you different? Because there are, I can't even think of the number of, like, probably hundreds of thousands of chiropractors or different types of doctors or things like that. What
Right.
makes you uniquely different? And what does that as being an expert? So we really help people to craft, like, what is your unique value proposition? What is your unique viewpoint? Who is your unique listener, right? People really mess up with, well, my audience is everyone. But if your audience is everyone, it's no one. So we really help people to get, like, who exactly are you talking to? How are you exactly talking to them? What matters to them? What doesn't matter to them? And when you can get those things down with truly understanding that you're trying to get somebody to know you, like you, and trust you, you can really win that way. But if you don't, like, none of that stuff's going to work.
Right. Right. Good point. Well, this has been awesome. Do you have any final words of, I want to say encouragement when it comes to you, Jeremy, because you're an encourager, I can tell. Um, you're a cheerleader for your clients and for anybody who knows you, I imagine. So any final words of encouragement that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I would say is done is better than perfect, because done is still going when perfect's still trying to figure it out. I don't care if there's misspellings. I don't care if it doesn't look beautiful, because you know what? I can fix it in version 2 or 3 or whatever, but I'm moving. So like, don't worry about making it perfect. Just get it done and get moving, because there's so many reasons, and you're going to make more reasons for yourself not to do something. So that's what I would say to the people listening. Don't make it perfect. Just get it done and get it out there, and take some user feedback and make it better. But done is better than perfect.
And where can people find out more about you?
So they can find out about me over at jeremyryanslate.com, or they can check out the book Unremarkable to Extraordinary, which is actually coming out on June 21st over at getextraordinarybook.com. And when they head over there and come and order, if they come back with their order number, we're going to give them a free version of the audiobook, as well as our guide of 30 days to extraordinary. So that's getextraordinarybook.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And your agency is commandyourbrand.com, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
All the things. So I'll put links in the description for the podcast and for over on the YouTube channel as well. So if people want to, they don't remember or they're in their car and they can't write it down, they can just go to the description later and click on that link. Jeremy, thank you so much for sharing with everybody and all your insights and experience. Appreciate you.
Hey, thank you so much, Bethany. This was awesome. I really hope we help a lot of people with this.